Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
This week at Safeway, shop the 10 for $10 produce sale. With the 10 for $10 produce sale, get items like large avocados, mangoes, green, red, orange, or yellow bell peppers, cucumbers, large lemons, or 16-ounce bags of Signature Farms baby-peeled carrots for the member price of just $1 each. Plus, select meats like Signature Farms 80% lean ground beef and Signature Select extra meaty pork loin back ribs are buy one, get one free this week. Hurry in before these deals are gone. Visit Safeway.com for more deals.
Well, it was fun to win on the MCG, and we had smiles as Eagle fans over the last few days, looking ahead to what should be another 4 points against the Adelaide Crows. But then things changed in an instant, like they can in this game. And unfortunately, Drew Jones, it was Willie Rioli again who has caused us a fair bit of angst. It's been a pretty ordinary day for Eagles fans, and in terms of Eagles news on the day of our recording of this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, in one sense, I guess it's good timing, but unfortunately, that's the only thing you could say that's positive about this. So Willie Rioli caught on the 23rd of April with cannabis at the Darwin airport. He was heading back to the Tiwi Islands, and naturally 25 grams caused some alarm with the police. So he's due in court in Darwin tomorrow, Garby, which makes that the 12th of May. Many amazing things about this story, many annoying, disappointing, sad, upsetting things about it. It's unbelievable that Willie Rioli did not tell the club. They found out because the integrity officer, it came across their desk yesterday. Can you believe that? He just thought it was going to go away, or maybe he could get away with it or something. The club must have been so angry and so disappointed to find that out. Garby, he's due back at the club in a month. The wait was almost over. Yeah.
We're going to go through the Hawthorn win. We'll go through your votes, so many of them. Thanks so much. They're fantastic. We'll look at we'll look at the changes that may take place for the Crows game, and then how we go about beating Adelaide, which we should obviously do. But let's touch on this issue because it is an important one. I mean, how can you be so silly? I don't understand it. I really don't. Him not telling the club, I can almost understand that because it is so stupid what he's done that he actually can't face fessing up to it, right? Like when you do something so stupid in life sometimes, like I'm sure you remember being a kid and you stuff up so much. It's like, I can't tell my parents. I need to hide this as best I can. Mm-hmm. It's kind of the same situation here. Like, okay, I know I need to tell them, but I just can't bear to do it because how big of a fool can I be? I don't have sympathy for Willie, right? I have sympathy because he's clearly got a dependency on marijuana, and that's sad. Like the second time it's been the cause of this concern, and he clearly needs it in his life, which is, a sad situation. And for that reason, I have sympathy for him. Outside of that, none. The club's given him every single opportunity to get himself back on track. They've supported him in such an incredible way, and not just since the first drug infringement. Then don't forget that when they drafted him, Adam Simpson was off to his hometown, meeting with his family. The Eagles have gone the extra mile, not just with Willie, but with all players of a unique background, to understand where they come from and to gain that understanding so that they can help them acclimatise into the club a lot better. So they've put massive trust on Willie and done so much for him. For him to do this, I really feel sorry for Adam Simpson and the club. Simo more than anyone else, because he's really backed him and been vocal. Some of the senior players, I'm sure, Trevor Nisbet, Craig Bozzo, but mainly Simo as the coach who has to wear the brunt of it in front of the cameras and the microphones. And now he's been let down enormously by Willie. So, yeah, I don't think he has to address it too much because it is what it is. But yeah, I feel sorry for the coach, and that's about the extent of where my sympathies go in terms of the two main perpetrators. For Willie, no.
So there's a few sad things about this, Garby. So we're losing a player who's genuinely given us a lot of joy when he's played football. I mean, I think we're basically assuming that he's not going to play for West Coast again. I think the likelihood is that he'll have his contract terminated.
You would think that's a possibility. The interesting aspect of this is that he's not likely to be to suffer massive ramifications at the hands of the law, because marijuana, like carrying that portion of it, is not a huge infringement. Most people don't even get a criminal record, and so I imagine he might not even for that. And his illicit drugs policy strikes, I'm not sure where they're at. He's obviously got one. Has he got two? I'm not sure. This might be his second, so he might actually be free to play, right? Technically, under the laws of the game. But you can understand the Eagles saying, Willie, that's enough. Or saying to him, listen, mate, this season, write it off. And June, that date, forget about it. But maybe the start of next season, they say, prove yourself. Come at the start of pre-season and prove yourself, and we'll think about it. That is a possibility in the cold light of day when everything settles. What do you think about that?
I think it would be a mistake if you're going to stay. If Willie Rioli is going to continue to play for West Coast, he needs to come back to the club as soon as possible, because you can't leave him out there. That I reckon part of the reason this has happened is because of the ban. But potentially he could have been, smoking pot for the last 18 months consistently, probably.
Yeah.
But would that have happened as much if he was coming to the club day in, day out, training with his teammates? In hindsight, they'll look back and say, in fact, they don't even need hindsight. Yeah. It's just a fact that the ban has meant that he hasn't had the routine of football. He hasn't had the contact with the club and his teammates that's required to keep him on track. And so there's a part of me that thinks and feels sorry for him for that fact. And there's a part of me that thinks, well, you're an adult. You have to look after yourself. You have to be accountable for your actions. Some people need more help than others. And I understand that Willie probably falls into that camp. There's a couple of other things, Garby. I know you're not too keen to have any sympathy for him. Chance Bateman's no longer at the club, who was the Indigenous liaison officer. Okay. So Trevor Nisbet has said, not on record, but we understand that he said that they couldn't afford to keep Bateman with the soft cap cuts. So his job went by the wayside. There's also no Lewis Jetta on the list anymore. And Jetta was the senior Indigenous player who would regularly reach out to Willie, especially when he wasn't at the club, to make sure that he was following his program and he was staying on course.
Yeah.
Willie's spoken about how he'd go running up in the Tiwi Islands to a billabong that was near, where he was with his family and with his community. A very simple anecdote, but it illustrates the importance that potentially Lewis Jetta played in keeping him on the straight and narrow. So no Jetta, no Chance Bateman. He's away from the club for a long time. Unfortunately, these things have unfolded the way they have. Look, I just don't see him ever playing for West Coast again. But I hope I'm wrong. I mean, if he can prove himself and we can get past this issue, I think he's going to have to prove that he can drop the drugs from his life. I think that's a fact, Garby. So whether he can do that or not remains to be seen. So do you think it's possible that – I just think they have to have him back at the club. So he trains with the team at least once a week. Maybe they make him train with the reserves or something, to sort of as a punishment. Try to get him back into the system and back into the routine and say, maybe next season, mate, if you can show us, we'll do some voluntary drug testing to make sure you're not slipping up. And we'll see how it goes. Do you think that's possible?
Possible. I mean, these are the comments from Craig Vozzo today. On the face of it, it's another poor decision. That does test club trust and personal trust. It's disappointing, really disappointing. Trevor addressed the playing group and our staff this morning. The plan was for him to return to the club on June 20 to get some connection back, but we're going to have to digest all of this, let the process play out and make a calm, measured decision from there. So reading between those lines, it looks as if Simo and them have said, we are furious with the bloke. We feel really let down. Don't really want him back now, but let's just wait to see how we feel in a couple of weeks. And we talk to him and then let's digest it and see what the situation is there. And obviously have to wait for the verdict to come from the court. So, yeah, I can see him being involved with the club again. I don't necessarily think it's career over, but I don't think it's the same plan that we had before. June 20 and he's playing round 23. I can't see that happening. I mean, the club, I think, has to issue him with some sort of suspension for this. Like, he's a contracted player. He's broken the rules again. He's let them down again. It can't just be you're scheduled to play round 23 like you were. It's like, nah, forget this season, Willie. You've cost yourself that. We want you to train with the club, but you're in no position to play. You've got to prove to us that you're completely off this stuff and you can start again from next pre-season. Where it sits right now, that's probably what I would like to see happen. Whether it does or not, yeah, who knows? But it's just really upsetting. And hopefully he can get things back on track, because we know he's a special footballer. But yeah, he's let the club down enormously, and I really feel for him in that regard. Anything more you want to add on this one, mate, before we move on?
I just love having Willie as a part of the club. I felt like he gives us a connection to one of footy's great families, the Riolis. He's a 2018 Premiership player. We know how good he can be. It's just a sad situation that that he hasn't been able to get control of his life, and that we haven't been able to help him and mould him yet into the man that hopefully he'll one day become. So hopefully, above all else,
tried everything. You know, I don't think we could have done anything more. And you're right about the Chance Bateman thing. That's a blow. Would that have made a difference while he's in Darwin? I don't think it makes a difference. Like, I mean, how much does one man have to go through to give something up? He clearly just, unfortunately, and that's the sad part, has a dependency on marijuana. I mean, surely everything he went through before, tampering with the drug sample, like, surely that's enough for him to know, like, I need to stop this stuff. He just couldn't for whatever reason. And that is sad. But, you know, he's stuffed up royally. He's had it enough of a chance. So, wow, he has to do a lot of work now to restore faith from those that matter at the club. Can he do that? I'm not sure. Time will tell. I still think he does have a future at the Eagles, but it won't be this season. I think we can all agree on that.
So Vozzo said today, he's a good person at heart. Like, we know we know he's a good person. He's just making poor decisions. That's the only thing that I heard from Vozzo today, which made me think maybe there's still hope for him, that they're willing. Like, the best thing for Willie in his life is to be a West Coast Eagles player from June 20 onwards. Like, that's his best chance at getting on the straight and narrow and ironing out those kinks in his life. So that's the most important thing. And if it's as a West Coast player, then that's good.
Hey, the other thing to come through in the last 12 hours or so, which was quite humorous, in fact, and I wish it was the other way around, that it had happened after Willie Rioli to give us all a bit of a lift, and that is the rumours that the Eagles were targeting Patty Cripps and are willing to trade Elliot Yeo for him. Craig Bozzo was asked about that today as well, and he said laughable about other things to deal with in the last 24 hours. It's more around Elliot Yeo. That's the laughable aspect. He's an integral part of our team, multiple best and fairest winner, and a leader for us. Cripps is a tremendous player, but I'm not here to talk about list management. Tom Brown broke that story. Our own Ryan Daniels, we call him our own because he's a WA boy, but he just said, poured the coldest of water on it about 5 minutes later, and the world continued to circulate as per normal. I mean, that would be the most ridiculous of trades, wouldn't it? Yeo, where he is, looking at where Cripps is at right now, even with his OP issues, Elliot Yeo, you wouldn't consider a trade like that, would you? You'd be shortchanged if you're an Eagle.
Can I just pull you up on the fact that you said Tom Brown broke that news? He didn't break anything. He just put a tweet out there that is clearly bullshit.
Well, for him, he'd say so if that comes through, Tom Brown would say he broke it.
No, but that's not correct. Like, because it's a break news, there has to be some semblance of truth.
Well, yeah, I agree. I think it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think what's most likely happened is that Tom has spoken to Patty Cripps' manager, and he said that, yes, there is interest from West Coast, which may well be true. I'd be shocked if West Coast hadn't spoke to Patty Cripps' management. He's out of contract.
Yeah.
And has shown no signs of signing one. There hasn't been any news about Cripps being on the verge of signing a new contract. You know, the fact that he's the co-captain of the club, he's from WA, he's out of contract, he's a free agent at the end of the season. You know, that's worth discussing from a West Coast point of view. At least get the temperature and see where he's at. But I would think that if Cripps' manager says, yes, West Coast are interested, but that we think salary cap might be an issue, then Tom has just picked Elliot Yeo's name out of a hat and just thrown it in there. Like, even if he did that, he didn't think very hard about it. Yeo's one of our most important players. He's one of the best two-way midfielders in the competition. And he's been injured for a year. Like, we put all this work into him to get his groins back to normal. We're not going to trade him away now. That is absolutely laughable. So, yeah.
Or he said to Cripps' agent, if that is correct, who could they trade for him? Oh, Yo's got those OP issues. Maybe they're keen to cut that salary cap. Oh, yeah, that works. I'll ask you this, though. Forget the Yo stuff, because we know that is ridiculous. Do you want Patrick Cripps at the Eagles, considering what you would have to pay him financially and what you may have to give up to Carlton in terms of a trade?
My instinct is no. I watched him on Sunday against the Western Bulldogs. Where was he? Where the hell did he go? They were up by 25 points. He had 11 possessions or something and about 4 in the second half, while Marcus Bontempelli, that's what a captain should be doing. He put a cape on and he dragged them over the line and he played amazing football. Patrick Cripps was nowhere to be seen. So, I mean, he's carried a heavy load at Carlton.
On form, yeah, massive. On form, he's not an A-grade midfielder.
No, not even close.
Not even close. I feel for him because when you are asked to play on the ball at a club that bad for so long, so young, you get to 26 and your body's banged up. That's what's happened. Now, I'm not saying he can't recover to a point where he can contribute, be it as a half forward or be it as a good midfielder, even an A-grade midfielder. But he's not the Patrick. I don't think he'll ever be the Patrick Cripps that he has been again. Like talking top 5 player in the league. No chance. Maybe he can still be a top 20 midfielder if he gets to grips with his body and finds a way to play amid the pain, maybe. But not that same level. And we saw it with Daniel Kerr. I use this analogy with Kerr. Kerr came in that first year, we were terrible. He played on ball. And then he had other blokes helping him out when Judd came and Cousins was there and some other midfielders that we all know about. By the time he got to 26, 27, though, his body was banged up. Daniel Kerr had 1 full season, and I think his last 6. Because his body was just finished. Now, Cripps is trying to play through that, and he can't. He's playing at 50% of what he's capable of because his body's just not helping him. So I wouldn't want us to trade up too much or pay him too much because I don't think we're going to get anywhere near the same level of player that he once was. And I'm sure his management is trying to sell him for that, trying to sell him on what Patrick Cripps was.
Yeah.
And now's the time to try and do that, but another year of it and you can't. So we've got to be very wary, and I'm sure we would be.
Yeah, I think one of Cripps' issues has been that he was drafted, or he slid back in the draft because his tank wasn't where it needed to be for a midfielder, which is what he was. And he's never got it to a point where he's had enough endurance to be an on-baller for an entire game of Aussie rules. But he's had to just run around gassed playing as a midfielder for most of his career. You look at him run around, he always looks cooked. And he has done for 2 or 3 years. If he played at West Coast, his life would be a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah.
But we're not going to pay him $1 million a season. Not a chance. And when everyone's fit, we don't really need him. But the prospect of having Cripps in the midfield for, half the centre bounces and then maybe sticking him in the forward line, that's pretty enticing. But we haven't got $1 million to spare, and he's not worth that.
No.
But he'll probably get paid that. So.
And we can't afford to trade up too much for him because we need to start replenishing.
If we trade away our first round draft pick, I'll be very disappointed. But we got to use one at some stage. But I just think Frio's the fit.
Yeah, they need an experienced midfielder.
If they trade Chera back to Victoria or, whatever, however that looks, that just seems the fit for me. And it's probably to Fremantle's detriment. They've got a great young midfield, plus 5. Obviously, Mundy's getting old. So, yeah, I've always thought that I'd love to see Cripps in a West Coast jersey. I just don't think it's just not the right fit right now. I don't think.
Anyway, but good to discuss a pertinent point. Right, let's get on to better news. The G on Sunday and knocking off those Hawks. It was great to see us play 3.5 quarters. I say 3.5 because the first half of the first quarter was pretty average, but I think we dropped to their level. They are really bad. So that's the disclaimer we need to put on this game. They are the second worst team in the league after North. I think it's pretty clear. So Hawks and North take the field this week. That's like you're playing for the number 1 draft pick kind of thing. And North will probably get it at the end of the season, but Hawthorn aren't that much better. They are really poor. I don't think we got out of second gear to win and to win convincingly without so many players. Yo, Shuey, McGovern, Barras, Hearn, Ryan. Good effort. Well done. Fantastic to see. So we celebrate it, especially a win on the road, and our midfielders shone against their only strength, which is their midfield, even without O'Meara. That was the one area that was of conjecture. The rest of the field we were going to be fine in, and our mids shone. So, yeah, great win. One that I really enjoyed on Sunday, and you were there, Drewy. How was it?
Yeah, first time I've seen West Coast win live, I think, for about 18 months. I was on a streak of, I don't know, about 5 losses and, getting locked out. So, good to see a win. It was laughable in the first 10 minutes how bad the game was. They kept turning it over, and then, I'm sorry, but Eleni Gluftis is terrible. And a couple of those decisions were just awful. It was hard to watch. When both sets of supporters are yelling at an umpire that they're going badly. So
there's 2 holding the balls, one on Giath and one on Sam Frost. Were nailed on shots on goal inside 50. And the whistle wasn't blown. I mean, that was hard to fathom. At that stage, I was like, there's going to be one of those days where we don't get the rub of the green early and then they get a head of steam and we lose an away game again. But thankfully that didn't occur. Yeah,
so we play the MCG well, and watching live, you get a really good sense of what we're doing. So Hawthorn defended the game. They defended quite well, and it was clear that they'd set up, and it worked in the first quarter. They know that they're not going to be able to keep up with us in most facets of the game, but they're going to try and keep it close and keep it competitive, break even in the midfield. And you could tell the difference it made once we started kicking goals, or there were goals in the game. I know that sounds obvious, but when we got it back to the middle, Nick Nat was just tapping it down the throat of either Kelly, Sheed, Redden or Gaff. And then the game opens back up again. So, great to see Archie come in and do well. Career best performance with 4 goals. Thought he was really lively. Jermaine Jones was good again. That's what you like to see. Bailey Williams bobbing up. In those games where, there's no doubt Tim Kelly wouldn't have gone into that game really highly motivated to perform well in a game against Hawthorn and the G when they're struggling so much. But you get those middle tier players step up and play good footy. That lifts everyone else. Having said that, I did think Kelly was really good in the first half in particular. Gaff felt like he was back to his best. I really thought Brad Shepherd played well in defence, intercepting. Yeah. Oscar was great again. Yeah. Darling, seriously, the work rate combined with the output is what's been so impressive. He is running himself into the ground to get to as many contests as he can. Hartley was wearing him like an absolute glove, was all over him all day, and Darling still put in a commanding performance. He's becoming... His creativity, Gubby, it reminds me a bit of Hawkins now. He's setting up goals. He's big around the ground and then pretty reliable with a set shot. I think he's up to about 16-4 or something for the season with set shots. He's doing a lot.
He's on All-Australian pace.
Yep.
He's undoubtedly on All-Australian pace, well and truly in calculations. The Eagles in All-Australian, Darling's certainly there. Barras was there. Now he's been injured. Tim Kelly's in the All-Australian mix. Probably the only 3 on our list right now who you'd have a bit of confidence about when it comes to championing them for All-Australian. Nick Natanui's not too far behind. If he had a good month, he would be up there, I think, for the second ruck behind Gawn. But those are the big 3, and Darling's leading the way. I'll give myself a tick and a kick, Drewy. I'm giving myself a tick for the pre-season headline I gave, which was Big Bad Bustling Bailey Williams. And it's come to fruition. What a beauty he is. We found one there. Yep. He's got pace. That's what I like about him. When he hits the ground, there's a bit of energy there, a bit of zest. He gets away from players. For a big man, that's good to see. Really good overhead, takes a couple of good marks and managed to convert after a couple of misses. I mean, I'm pretty sure he's our number 2 ruck now. I think he plays over Vardy.
Yeah, I was going to ask you basically a yes or no question. If Bailey Williams is fit and doesn't need to be rested or rotated, does he play now every game?
I think he's second ruck. Yeah. I think he's our second ruck over Vardy. I think he's done enough in that one game. And he's the future. Tough on Vards, but yeah, it's AFL football. That's the way it goes. Young kids coming through, showing a bit. I think he gives us a little bit more. I really like his zip. So, yep, I'd have him in over Vardy. But then I'm giving myself a kick because I've been a little bit critical of Brendan Archie, and he comes in and does that. So, well done, son. That was fantastic. 4 goals. He burst the game open when we were struggling to kick one. Yeah, he won over a doubter in me. A long way to go, of course, but to do that away from home on the MCG, kick those first couple, especially the way in which he did, that got us going. So that was fantastic to see, and it's been reflected in the votes, which we'll get to in a minute. A lot of love for Brendan Archie, which as there should have been. So that was fantastic. I would not have expected that. If you'd said to me Brendan Archie would come in and kick 4 goals in his first game of the season and be one of the best players, I would have said you're absolutely laughing. But he did it, and I'll take the knock for that.
17 touches, 4 goals, 6 tackles. Great all-round performance from a high half forward.
That's his best game for the Eagles. That's undoubtedly.
Yeah, that's his best game that he's ever played for any club in the AFL. Again, and I'll say the same with Bailey Williams. I want to see them do it like maybe in a couple of weeks' time against the Giants away from home. Like that's gonna be a big game for us. Shaping as a cracking game, which you'll be calling on ABC, by the way. Congratulations on your AFL commentary debut.
Thank you.
But yeah, we want to see Bailey do it. Like you'll get a chance this week against Adelaide to really make an impression, I reckon. And then away against the Giants, possibly against Mumford, that's when we get a really good gauge on where Bailey's at, if he's ready. Because his leap looks good in the ruck. Like he's got a lot of bounce. He's got dynamite in his shoes, which is great. Because that really complements Nick, doesn't it? But let's just see it against the bigger and better boys.
But these kinds of players are hard to find. Like, look at how many recycled rucks there are in the AFL.
Yeah.
They go round and round and round. The Tom Hickeys and the Andrew Phillipses of the world and so many others, right? Because these players who aren't superstar rucks from the outset, they find it difficult to develop. Like, we've got a real find here in Bailey Williams. I know there's a long way to go. It's only one game where he's really jumped up, but I think the importance of that and the significance is not something that should be lost. Like, he's a really valuable player.
Yeah, and it's the forward stuff that also gets me excited, because the key these days is you've got to be able to go forward and give me something. And he had 3 shots a goal in the second quarter. He'll get better at finishing those chances. But if he can contribute when he's not in the ruck and around the ground, like that's a massive tick for us, because it gives us a lot of flexibility with what we do post Nick Naitanui. Do we want Bailey to be the number 1 ruck? Maybe. Do we want him to be the number 2 and go after another big dominating ruckman? Potentially. So we've got options there. And just on that, Gabi, while we're on rucks, this has really fascinated me. So I've done a bit of work on it today. I've been following up. So Nick Naitanui was the highest rated player on the ground in the game. So the AFL player ratings, which are essentially the AFL branded champion data stats. So the boss of champion data comes into the office here, Daniel Hoyne. So I had a chance to chat to him today. And I sort of reached out on Twitter as well to just the everyday fans to get their impressions as well. So highest rated player on the ground, Archie was second. And I spoke to Hoyne today about why Nick Nat was rated so highly for his performance, because I noticed his ruck work for sure, but I didn't think he was a dominant player necessarily in the game. Yeah. So Hoyne said it's all about where you get the ball, what you do with it, and what the end result is. So Nick Nat, as far as champion data goes, as far as advanced analytics, when he wins a hit out in the middle and it's a hit out to advantage, West Coast get a clearance and score a goal, that's a massive tick for his influence on a game. So he might tap it to Kelly, who handballs to Sheed, who kicks to Kennedy, Kennedy kicks the goal. Nick Nat gets the most, I guess, reward from a champion data point of view for that string of play. If Nick Nat lays a tackle in the centre, ball spills out, West Coast get a clearance, kick a goal. Again, Nick Nat gets the biggest reward. So Champion Data rate him as the second most influential player in the competition behind Marcus Bontempelli. And per minute, Nick Nat is rated as the highest influencing player in the AFL. So what he does when he's around the ball has the biggest influence. And people who are pining for him to take marks around the ground to get more possessions, they're trying to fill out a stat sheet, which essentially AFL coaches and scouts aren't looking at.
Yeah. That discussion around Nick Nat has become infuriating because, okay, if you were to point out one weakness in his game, he could take a few more marks around the ground. Like he could. He's a good pack mark. Could he take a few more? Yes. He's not a perfect footballer. Like he's one of the greatest ruckmen of all time, but he's not the perfect footballer, right? He has flaws like many players do. That is his one flaw. But this whole notion that he has to do more around the ground, it's got to the point now where it's so ridiculous because he's not that type of player. He's just not. And if he was that kind of player, then he wouldn't be as influential in the contest. Like Brodie Grundy and Max Gawn and Dean Cox were that kind of ruckman. They're incredible for it, but they weren't as influential as Nick Naitanui in the clinches and with his ruck taps, as brilliant as they all are. So you can't just ask him to be something different, right? Just look at the effectiveness for what they are. That's all you have to do. He's not going to all of a sudden transform into that kind of player now. He's over 30 already. He's been in the competition for over 10 years. It's just nonsense. But he could take a few more pack marks. Yes, he could lift his average marks from 1.5 to 3 for the season. That's, I think, a reasonable KPI that could be lifted. Outside of that, just shut up about all that already. It's just so silly.
Yeah, so every single player in the competition has flaws. Not every player is good at every single thing. It's just a question of how much you want to talk about it. So Marcus Bontempelli is a terrible set shot.
Yeah.
And so is Nat 5. But most of the discussion around those two players is based around their strengths. So people are quick to point out Nick Nat's flaws. I really have no idea why. Anyway, so I just thought that was interesting. He was our highest rated player on the weekend, and his tap work was simply sensational. And we love him. We appreciate you, Nick. I'm sure you're probably not listening, but I just want to make that clear. So
he gets a lot of love as well, Nick. Like he gets more love than he gets criticism. Let's be honest. Like he does get plenty of plaudits across the league. So we shouldn't cry poor in that regard. But let's get into the votes because I think our reflection on the midfielders who we haven't touched on in as much detail will come through in the votes. So you kick it off, Drewy, and then we'll get the Nest Medal finale votes for this week.
Yeah, so very close between Sheed and Gaff for me. Both had a lot of the ball. I've gone Gaff in the end. One vote. Tim Kelly, I thought excellent in the first half when the whips were cracking. So I've given him 2. Brad Shepherd was a pillar of strength down back for us. The Hawthorn's entries were not great, but Shepherd was always in the right spot to intercept. And I'm not going to downplay the importance of Shepherd right now when you consider that 4 of our normal back 6 aren't playing in Duggan, Hearn, McGovern and Barras. There's 4 pretty good intercept defenders there. So Shep had to step up and did. Darling gets 4. But Archie, for the way that he bobbed up and played an integral role, kicking 4 goals, great all-round performance, the best hit for him and the Eagles. Guernsey, he gets the 5 from me.
So the interesting thing about the votes for this week, we haven't had a spread votes-wise like we have this week. We have had in terms of the amount of players who have got votes, but not between the top 5 and where they've sat on the vote tally. So we've had guys who've got 5s who've also had 1s. And there's been a real spread amongst the top 5, which has been interesting this week, which shows that I think there were 5 standout players, but how you jostled them was really hard to determine. That showed in all the submissions, and it shows in our 2 submissions, Drewy. So you had Gaff with the 1, I had Gaff the 5. You had Archie the 5, I had Archie the 1. That shows how much it turns. So I went Gaff 5. I just thought the amount of possessions, his inside 50s, his clearance numbers, fantastic. Best game he's played for the season, clearly. He's back to his best. Great to see. He got the 5 for me. Sheed the 4, similar to Gaff. Just gave it to Gaffy for slightly more clearances and inside 50s. I gave Darling the 3 for his work, his marking, just controlled the forward line superbly. Kelly the 2, lit it up when it was there to be supercharged the game and then kept it going in the second half. Archie the 1. I mean, his goals are fantastic. He's really important when the game was up for grabs. Then wasn't as involved as much, but still managed to kick a couple. So, yeah, great to have him in on the votes as well. So our votes completely different in that sense. A lot of submissions. Thank you so much to everyone who's voting. It's taking a lot longer to tally them all up, but that's great. We enjoy it because we've got a lot of people contributing. So this week, Andrew Gaff had 82 votes. He gets the 5. Brendan Archie, 70 votes. He gets the 4. Jack Darling, 63 votes. He gets the 3. Dom Sheed with 52 votes. He gets the 2. And Brad Shepherd and Tim Kelly tied on 15, but Kelly had more 5 votes with the 1, so he gets the 1 vote. Rough on Shep, but that's just the way it works. So Tim Kelly gets the 1 vote. That means the updated leaderboard. And ding, 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 we have a new leader in the Nest Medal. And it is Jack Darling, who has jumped up to 15 votes.
Get around him.
Jackadee. So Jack Darling, the leader on 15. Oscar Allen and Tommy Barras still on 13. So Tommy holding despite being out for a couple of weeks. Tim Kelly on 13 as well. So he joins them in a 3-way tie for second. Andrew Gaff, all of a sudden, after stinking up the first 5 weeks or so, is up to 11 votes, Drewy. Dom Sheed on 8 and Nick Natanui on 8. So Darling 15, Oscar Allen 13, Barras 13, Kelly 13, Gaff 11, Sheed 8, Nick Nat 8. That is the leaderboard as it stands in the Nest Medal. Jack Darling leading the way at this stage of the season.
Having a great season. I've got him in a couple of fantasy teams, so I've been following him very closely. But no doubt, I'd be hard-pressed to leave him out of the All-Australian team at this point. I know a lot of players have kicked a lot of goals. I just reckon we'll get to the end of the season and you'll look back at Darling's body of work and it's going to be hard to leave him out.
If Josh Bruce is in the All-Australian team ahead of Jack Darling, I will feel sick physically.
We kicked 11
Come
goals.
on, he's done well, Josh Bruce,
North.
but he's not going to outlast him over the season, surely.
No, he's not going to. And he's kicked most of his goals in one game against North. Yeah. Darling's such an unselfish player that it's unlikely he's going to kick a bag like that.
So I think Tom McDonald's in at the moment. I think he gets in on form. Bruce is there, but I've got Darling in as another forward. Who are the other contenders that might edge him out?
Well, Taylor Walker, the last couple of weeks, he's flattened. Harry Mackay's got a fair bit of momentum behind him, but can he keep it for the whole year? And then who else is up there in the Coleman?
Well, Hawkins has still been solid. So
he hasn't kicked as many goals.
Brilliant. No, but Cameron's starting to take some of the goals off him.
Yeah.
And he, come the end of the season, could match it. So, yeah, Jack's right there. I reckon right now, if you're picking the team, he's in. So hopefully he can maintain it. It's great to see. He's already got an All-Australian blazer. Hopefully he can get another one. There's a chance for him to kick a bag along with the others against the Crows on the weekend. But we should win handsomely.
Great opportunity to get
a game in the West. It should really be a comfortable, ruthless victory.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a great chance to get a bit of that percentage. So, yeah, I'm trying to envisage what the best result for West Coast is. Do we want like a really fast start, like Port Adelaide, and then try and maintain? Or do you come hard, and finish the game strong? Just from a mental point of view, I'm just trying to envisage how we're going to get this percentage boost, because we just haven't done it for so long. When's the last time we really nailed a team down and just absolutely belted them? I just can't remember. It's been a while.
Yeah, I mean, the only challenge is us being switched on enough mentally. I'm sure the players subconsciously think we will win this game. I'm not going to say that, obviously, but they'll think it in the back of their minds. Like Chris Judd used to say, it was a great feeling going to Subi on a Sunday and just knowing you were going to win. At the height of 06, I read his book. That's what he says. It was just a lot of fun. But he still had to work hard and lift and fight and all those sorts of things, but they just love doing it. There's no reason why they shouldn't win comfortably and be ahead from the outset and just go and have a great afternoon out. So we've got more class than them. They don't have much midfield strength and they can't match us around the ground. And we said Hawthorn and North are the two worst teams. They probably are. Adelaide's probably third worst in the competition at the moment. So great opportunity for us to kick away and have a fun afternoon. The changes for the game. So McGovern and Barras probably come in, Drewy. who goes out? And that question did come from Candace. I'll get the question up exactly to see if there are other elements to it. But who do you think goes out for Gov and Barras, assuming they both come in?
I reckon it's definitely possible that Waterman would have to make way, because
I agree on that.
Harry Edwards obviously will go out. Yeah. And I'm comfortable with that, even though he has played fairly well. But Oscar Allen goes back to the forward line. I think something has to give, and I think it's probably Waterman. You think there's a way that they can integrate him back into the midfield rotation?
I'm looking at the team that played on Sunday. I don't see anyone else that goes out. So for me, it's Edwards, unfortunately, done really well. But he goes out for Gov, and then Allen goes forward. Barras comes in, and Waterman goes out. I mean, you look at this team, who else could it be? It's not going to be Archie. He would have been the one, right? It would have been Archie. But then he goes and kicks 4 goals. You can't drop him.
Yeah.
And then we get a bit too tall if we keep Waterman and Allen in, I think. So I reckon that's the only change. And then, the other option is that Oscar Allen plays second ruck, but they are loath to do that. And I understand it. The games are too long. They don't want to do it, and they won't do it. So they'll keep Bailey Williams in. You're not going to drop Jared Brander on form.
No.
You're not going to drop Jermaine Jones on form. You get too tall if you drop a Langdon or a Petricelli. Can't see that happening. So I think it has to be Waterman. It'll be tough on him. He was really good against Freo in the Derby, and he was solid against the Hawks, but I think that's the way it has to be.
Yeah, maybe Langdon. Maybe.
I mean, Waterman can play a bit shorter because he's got good pace and he can run, but not for me. I don't think he's been good enough to force his way in that we'd be willing to unbalance things that much.
Yeah, I just wonder if it's a dry day at Optus Stadium, they'll probably feel like they can get away with the extra height. But Simo, please do not play Oscar Allen as the second ruck.
No, he won't do it. I really don't think he'll do it. I don't think there's any concern of that happening whatsoever. And I think they'd be really impressed with Bailey Williams and what he's done. Why would they change that now? They've clearly said we don't want to play Oscar second ruck with the games this length. They only played him that way because the games were shorter last season.
Yeah, Bailey's got to play. Perfect opportunity for him to have a run against Adelaide in a home game. And, yeah, look, give Jacob a spell in the twos. And, if required, I guess you could fit him into another role. But, yeah, it's a good position to be in. We've got more than 22 good players, so we can't fit them all in.
Candace wants to know if we rest a couple, Josh Kennedy or Nick Natanui. Kennedy with the little calf issue, didn't seem severe, but maybe if that calf is troubling, then he misses out. If he does, then Waterman obviously plays, so that problem is solved if he does. I don't want us to rest anyone, though. And we've got the bye coming up in a few weeks. No, we can't. When you rest players, it automatically says to players, the coach thinks we will win this game. We can't afford to have that mentality in it all. We need to change the mentality of the group and make them a ruthless side. And this is a perfect opportunity to try and do that.
Yeah, I just don't think with the injuries that we have, resting anyone's an option at the moment. Maybe there are some guys who are a bit banged up and might need it, but this is AFL. This is the elite comp. You're going to be a little bit sore at times, and you've got to push through. As you say, there's a bye in 4 weeks, and there's opportunities down the line to get a rest in, but it's not going to be the next few weeks. Like there's a pretty important month of football ahead to try and bank some wins and get some percentage back, and this is another step in that direction.
Yep, Sammy Phillips has asked about Oscar Allen, Bailey Williams, that situation. We've answered it pretty well. Some of the other questions have been about Willie. I think we've discussed that at length too. So I think we've covered it all, mate. Let's just hope that the Willie stuff doesn't cause too much of a downer. I don't think it will. It definitely affected them in that Geelong final, but that was a completely different circumstance. I can't see it being the same sort of issue, but there's always that fear that it just rocks them a little bit. Any concerns for you on that?
Interesting when Vozzo was asked today about telling the players, and he said, there was a mixture of emotions. There was shock and there was anger. Hopefully that's just channeled in the right way.
Yeah.
And they can deal with it, move on, Willie's been in the background for a while now in terms of that bubbling away, and with the ASADA and the sport integrity unit or whatever, trying to deal with all that. So it's not as though they haven't got form in having that in the background. So I don't think so. I don't think so.
It did rock them with the Geelong game. Like Adam Simpson on the MCG before the Hawthorn clash, he said the last time we were here was the Willie Rioli game. Those were his words.
Yeah.
Which means that it clearly summed up the whole clash, that whole final against the Cats. To them, it was like, it just overrid everything, right?
Yeah.
But that was a completely different circumstance. Willie was a key player then. It was a shock. It was in the lead up to a final. It happened a couple of days before the final. It completely dominated everything. This is very different. So I can't see it having the same impact, but you never quite know. Hopefully it doesn't, and we can cruise to 4 points against the Crows and keep building our season from there.
Absolutely, Garby. Thanks everyone for tuning in to The Nest. Let's get this done. 6-3. Knock off these Crows.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.